particularly if you exclude China. The evidence that special economic zones lead to sustained economic growth is not there. I think the reason for this is because oftentimes the zones are effectively constructed as tax breaks to politically connected organizations, and they lack the type of deep reforms as well as multi-use properties that can set the stage for sustained economic growth.
I would like to ask the same question of Tom.
I guess I'll boil it down to competitive governance between jurisdictions, having competition between jurisdictions, because special economic zones are actually like this phrase, I've never heard Michael use this before, special governance zones. I think it's even better. These zones, you get to try out reforms. If it works, you learn, you replicate it. That's Hong Kong taking over China, really. So that's why it's so important to have these zones.
So now I would like to ask about what challenges have zones in general faced around the world. And I'm first going to ask this question once again to Tom and Mark.
So challenges zones have had across the world. First, getting them started, I had a good conversation at lunch with some people who are trying to start such a zone in Mississippi, and it's hard. It's really difficult to get politicians to give up power. Surprise, surprise. Good luck, boys. Another problem they had, these were referred to by Lotte Moberg indirectly, but basically what happens is corruption. I can't really say great things about the US system. I don't mean people are taking money under the table. I just mean the policy is structured so it's not really to the public benefit. It benefits the people who pay the lobbyists and the accountants and the lawyers to get this special classification. So it can be done badly, and when it's done badly, it looks bad for special jurisdictions generally.
I think oftentimes as we think about special economic zones, we're considering the framing incorrectly. So countries can be thought of as having a set of laws. Special economic zones effectively say, all right, let's figure out how to make this legal set marginally more effective. This can mean lower tax rates, this can mean expedited business registration, it can mean simplified customs. However, on the margin, that doesn't lead to substantive enough economic changes for growth.
So I'd like to address the next question to Victor to follow up on what Tom and Mark said, because Victor has the unique experience on the panel of actually running a special economic zone in Costa Rica. So what challenges have you faced when creating your zone, and how did you overcome them?
Well, in my case, I think this is something different. We are trying to build an economic zone, a special economic zone in a rural area. It is far away from the capital. That is good, of course. And when the people that organized this idea went to the government, the answer to the government was really disappointing. Was that we didn't have the personal resource, infrastructure to build something like that. But in this case, all the community start taking like a challenge and say, okay, we could do it. And 15 years ago, we make a big deal with all the community, with some institution that give us some professionals, free, by free. And we start changing. And now we are a real example for our government. And that is so that even the last year the government take our example and trying to put the same style of model to another rural place in Costa Rica. And our president Chinchilla, 6 years ago, they went to China and he thanked because we copied the style of China in this case, and was really successful.
And could you tell us a bit more about how your zone looks, how the rules for doing business differ from your zone as they do from the rest of Costa Rica?
Well, like I told you, we are in a different experience. Right now, in the north area, We are expecting to open a new road in 2 months that will connect our North Zone to the Atlantic with the biggest port that Costa Rica has. And we start with the international airport. And the surprise of this even for me, because I am working, building a project many years ago, and I have to be honest, I involved in this process just in the last 5 years. But I find that people have a really chance to start working together without the government, but with the help of some institution. They get the goal. They come up with something magic that works by inspiring and don't stop. And I feel at this moment inspired about my place, and I would like that this example copy in another.
So now I have a question I'm going to ask to Michael. And what is the most exciting, and what are the most exciting zone projects that you're currently looking at right now?
Well, right now, I mean, it's kind of hard to beat this project in Honduras that we're working on. It has tremendous potential under the Zeta law. It's an interesting thing to look at if you haven't looked at it before. There's, it essentially creates a blank slate, and the Honduran Constitution applies, and Honduran criminal law and international law, but you get to basically build everything from scratch beyond that, which is far more extensive than just about anything I've ever seen in the zone space. Short of that, like second place that come in various zones projects that go a few steps beyond the customs exemptions, the tax exemptions that we see in a lot of zones. If you can, really good zones start to get into the area of making it more streamlined to get a business permit and a construction permit, and maybe you ease labor regulations in positive ways that don't undermine working conditions and so forth. And we've seen that in like Panama Pacifico is a great example. Aqaba, special economic zone. Shenzhen, which reformed a lot of communist policies in China, is very strong in that regard too.
So you mentioned the concept of good zones that go above and beyond sort of reducing customs duties and stuff like this. So my question is, what makes a good special economic zone? I'm going to ask everyone.
I'd say the key factors are the deepness of reforms. The ideal is to start with a blank slate upon which you can adopt existing best practices. Secondary, you want mixed use, so it's not dependent on a single industry. And third, and one thing that's particularly nice about the Zeta law, is the ability to expand, so if a zone is successful, it can keep on growing to really fit the demand for that particular rule set.
Okay, for me, is the support of the government, and of course, the inspire of the people to have a really good teams working in a goal, special.
There's a lot of things I could say there, but I'll just pick out one thing that I've only been thinking about recently, and that is after you get a government to start giving you a lot of leeway to innovate, which is what we've been focused on because it's so hard to get, putting into place the institutional structures to make sure it, frankly, doesn't blow up in your face. You should not assume, we get freedom, we're going to do an awesome job, it's going to be better than everything. No one's ever going to say, spill some oil in the lagoon. That never happened to us. Maybe you should invest in some oil booms, just in case. So it's that kind of, institutional design problem of actually, because nobody's done it before, predicting how you could fail and preventing those failures from getting very bad. So all I can say is, I'm glad a lot of smart people are working hard on that. We should all be glad.
Okay, so I'm now going to open up the floor to questions. So please raise your hand and tell me who you want to address the question to. So, any questions? Yes?
We've seen in
Have you seen any special economic zones building cryptocurrency-friendly jurisdictions? He asks. No, I don't think so.
The best example is probably Dubai. It's not a special economic zone. It's composed of 30 plus separate special economic zones, and they're looking to use the blockchain to basically simplify real estate transactions. But so far, sort of interest in cryptocurrency from special economic zones has been relatively limited.
Well, the question was about what has been done, right? Not what's going to happen?
No, including what's, if you predict any.
Yeah, I thought you want to know about the future. So I can tell you, I've been working with some people to come up with e-government solutions that are integrated and include cryptocurrency. And right now, we're basically putting all the building blocks into place, making sure you can have the cryptocurrency interface with your property registry, interface with your online dispute resolution system, so that if someone cheats you on a property deal, you can automatically have the funds transferred to your account after you do the online adjudication. You know, it's a complicated problem, but people are working on it again.
So also, I would like to point out that there's Liechtenstein, which is not a special economic zone, but it's a small city-state country between Austria and Switzerland. And the royal family and government of Liechtenstein, they all use Bitcoin, they all understand it. And it's probably the government in the world that's the most enthusiastic about blockchain. So I look into Liechtenstein. Hey, Saban.
Are there examples where economic zone came out of something like a power back or a crisis as opposed to kind of being granted?
It depends on, right, exactly what you mean, but most of
Repeat the question?
Oh, has there been an example where a special economic zone has been the result of a power vacuum or a political crisis? Shenzhen, which is arguably the most successful one, right? I think it wasn't until 1982 or 1983, Loda, you might know, that Deng Xiaoping actually formally approved it, who was the premier of China. It was essentially a party struggle that the existing leadership ignored because it was in such a backwater that nobody cared about it. Another example is, Honduras, right? The Zeta law passed after a coup in 2009. I say coup because there was a democratically elected president who was removed from power, but at the Supreme Court and at Congress's order. So right, what is the line between coup and not coup?
Those projects, yes. Also, of course, beloved Liberland. If you know the story, you know why I cite Liberland. It's a little chunk of territory between Croatia and Serbia, which neither country has claimed. And so Pete Jedlinka and some others went there and planted a flag and said, this is now a new country, Liberland. And also, a project that only recently came to my attention, very interesting to Karen people in Burma. Another contested area. They've had the longest running civil war for many decades there, and looks like that might open up some space for government innovation.
And what about you?
Yeah, I don't know. What comes to mind are places like Hong Kong, that sort of emerged out of different historical factors. There's sort of different types of special, normally a special economic zone comes from the exact opposite types of situation, because you have to have like a government that's all sort of like on board with it, and all the different interest groups are sort of all behind this thing in order to get them to all work together. So you actually need a lot of collaboration. But you're right. What you guys have mentioned is really good. Lana, you might have. Can you think of anything?
Well, I would just encourage you to talk a little bit about the Sahara camp in Jordan, because that's where there's a lot of connections to exactly that type of
Good
thing.
point. Oh, right. Good point. Obviously there's like 600. Hi. There's about more than 500,000 Syrian refugees, 500 million Syrian, no, million, right, there's only 7 billion people. Syrian refugees in Jordan. There's the largest refugee camp in the Middle East is the Zaatari refugee camp in Mafraq in northern Jordan. And just so happens that literally next door to it is the King Hussein bin Talal development area, which is this big special economic zone that was built. It's at about 10% occupancy. So in other words, there's all this infrastructure that's been built, all this money sunk into the ground, and there's no businesses there. The main reason is because there's no labor market there. There's not a lot of people who live out there. It's out in the middle of the desert. And what do you know? The Syria crisis happens, and now there's 84,000 people, refugees, living right next door. So the project now is to work out something with the Jordanian government to let the people in the refugee camp work over in the King Hussein bin Talal development area. And that's happening. It's been a little bit of a challenge getting industries to locate there for a variety of reasons, but that's a good example of conflict resulting in new opportunities for zones like that.
We've got a question down here next.
Hi. I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about the effect of the Belt and Road Initiative and the resulting special economic zones, economic development that's going on in Eurasia as a result.
The One Belt, One Road, the Chinese infrastructure project linking east to west.
Everybody I've talked to working on a zone in basically Central Asia doesn't like it because the money comes with way too many strings. So I imagine there are zones that do exist that are based on it. However, my impression, Okay. From the people I have talked to, there's a reluctance to become involved in that. And as well as I see a fairly strong difference between Chinese special economic zones and Chinese influenced special economic zones and special economic zones throughout the world.
Yeah, I have a curious example. 10 years ago, a group of Chinese businessmen, they went to Costa Rica, to the North Sound, and they asked to the local government that gave them about 500,000 hectares, rural area, of course, cheap area, to build an economic zone, a special area of industry. In this case, that was really impossible. In our country, people are the owner of the land, and they are not going to give free any meter. And that was curious because they thought that was so easy to go and ask to the government to keep the land and they would put all money. But the thing doesn't work that way. So there was a failed experience.
Okay, next question.
Hi, we heard from Lada this morning and then from Mark just now that the term special economic zone is kind of a mixed one. There's been a lot of disappointment. Some great things have happened, but there's been a huge amount of apparent disappointment where it wasn't implemented the way we would like to see it implemented. And then just now, we heard another term, special governance zones. And I wonder what the panel would think about saying, all right, let's take that term, give a very clear definition, minimum standards. You don't use that term unless it meets these minimum standards for reform. It's your term, right? You get to make up what it stands for. And if you want to use that term, here's our definition. And that's what we're talking about. Yes, it's kind of like a special economic zone, but it's a more, it's a cleaner version. It's all about better governance. So what do you think about, sometimes changing terminology can help. So what do you think about that?
So Michael coined the term, so I'll pass the mic to him.
I coined that term because I learned recently that was actually, I'm not sure what the Mandarin word is, but that was the original term that was being used in China that ended up getting changed into special economic zone. And because the initial goal was to actually reform governance, but the only way they could sell it politically is to talk about economics, because they wanted economic growth. And so they said these are going to be special economic zones. Yeah, so it's a challenge because when you're focusing on economic returns, you can sell it a little bit easier politically. You know, you can talk about jobs and new investment and all this kind of stuff that's really attractive politically. It's scary. You get a lot more opposition when you start saying all of these different agencies, you're all going to need to change your power. You know, the way you do things. You know, the labor secretary needs to change labor policy, and you know, that's a challenge politically. So a lot of times, you know, we use names because it's sort of politically expedient to use that name. But maybe sometimes you can get a lot done also, even under a name that's yeah, right. And actually, this is why the term special economic zone is used so much for things that are just like single company tax breaks. You know, they'll designate one company a special economic zone. This happens a lot because it sounds attractive. You know, to call something a special economic zone. Makes for good publicity and everything. And you know, so a lot of this is just sort of branding anyway. And it's hard to, you know, we use the term special economic zone to describe these kind of things like what Shenzhen was, that are really progressive in terms of the policies that they change. But one of the byproducts of that is Shenzhen was so massively successful that every country now wants to say, we're going to build a special economic zone. And look at Shenzhen, look how great it was. And even though they're not really doing anything else except, you know, a tax holiday for 10 years or something.
So I think it'd be awesome if Chris Peterson, the creator of open source, also gave us a new term here. So, no te bene. But were you saying reform? So you're saying a special reform zone? Policy zone? Okay, let me just observe, I think that's worth pursuing, but maybe special is the problem. Special is not always good. You know, people say, well, you're special. You're apart from us. Our societies, I like that. We've heard.
I think it's useful to look at what's arguably the most successful example, even if it wasn't successful, which is Paul Romer's charter cities. I mean, he was able to get further, I believe, than any current project has, or any other past project has in the last 20 or so years. And I believe framing matters. My preferred term is free cities, and the defining characteristic is essentially substantial legal autonomy from the government, and or you could say deep economic reforms, right, to have basically the legal foundation that can attract capital and create growth. And then the city aspect is also important, because cities are mixed use. You don't just want a single industry, because that will only achieve level effects. It's not going to achieve the growth effects that are necessary for countries to escape from poverty.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
Yeah, what's your question?
So my question is specifically, so I had support from the state chancellor's office and from California legislature. Can you hear me up there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. And from the California legislator to turn California Community College into free trade zones for intellectual property. And I'm kind of at a point where it's specifically going to be focused on US-based companies, but I'm at a point where I'm stuck for information in looking for policy. How do I progress in writing the policy to submit to the California legislator, and where California's legislator limits lie before I have to take it federally?
So I'm going to repeat the question. Brad is working on a project to create free trade zones in colleges in California, especially related to regulations such as intellectual property, so that you can have a more innovative campus. And he is wondering what sort of steps and things he could do to help increase the success of his efforts.
So you want to create sort of special zones for intellectual property in California?
Tariff-free.
there's not a lot you can do under California law. You have to worry about patent and copyrights primarily, and that's federal law, and there's no way a state can say federal law doesn't apply in our territory. Now, if you want to talk about going after intellectual property at the federal level, I mean, we should talk. I'd be excited about that. Also, don't leave out data protection. I've actually seen a proposal recently for someone who has to work under the data protection rules and privacy rules in the EU, saying, how about if we create some special kind of virtual zones where you can actually have a business model that doesn't require you to keep, to let your customers into your database. Can we just try that? So I like what you're working with, and I don't know how it's going to work with intellectual property under California law, though. You get trade secrets, right of publicity. Yeah, that's about it. Trademarks.
I'm probably grossly butchering it, so you'd have to ask Brad. Okay, next question. Yeah, I think we lost one of the mic.
Well, I appreciate it anyway. I was wondering, what are some of the main obstacles that you face in trying to push this idea to people, both to businesses, individuals, and people out there who want to.
I'm going to repeat the question. So when telling people about special economic zones and these ideas, what is the main pushback and counter-arguments that people make when you tell them about zones?
And how can you overcome?
And how do you overcome? How about, I know that...
Actually, this gentleman has launched the zone. Can I pass to him? Because you had to argue with people, right?
Well, in the case, again, I think I live in a happy land. So the people... So, I've received just a good answer in our country, and I think it's because it's a really new idea, different, totally different, that even surprised the government. Because we didn't ask the favor for the government. We just did it. And the result was so good that the government started copying. And I think it's a special economic zone. That's the reason. Maybe the second one would be different, because now the government wants to copy style and put it in another places. Maybe the result will not be the same. But in our case, it was a nice surprise.
So it sounds like you didn't have to deal with the arguments because you just did it. I will say that one problem I faced is a lot of people associate this with radical libertarian ideas. Okay with me, okay with about 2% of the population. About everybody else, they say, oh, you want to do some radical Ayn Randian Gulch thing, and honestly, for a lot of this population, I can't say no. I have to say there are many people interested in those ideas, and then I have to shift and talk about the broader implications. And it's, it's some work. I'm starting down the hole. That's why I try to not lead with that, but people, if they've heard about it, they've heard of that.
I should also point you to go buy Lotta Moberg's book, because it's all about political economy and special economic zones and types of things. But one of the things in that book, and something that I've faced a lot, is there's always an argument, and for good reason, from industries that are not going to be in the special economic zone, that, hey, why are you giving them all this great treatment and not us? And that's not fair, and you're putting us at a competitive disadvantage because they're getting the customs exemptions, tax breaks, different regulatory regime, all that kind of stuff. And so the other companies, understandably so, think that's unfair. And the way to put that from sort of like an economist's perspective is it causes market distortions. It's like you've said, this location is going to be more advantageous for doing business, not because of any kind of natural advantage it has, but purely because of something that's been done by government. So that's an argument that's dealt with a lot.
Any questions?
Can anyone speak to the concept of the consent of the governed in these zones?
Can anyone speak to the question of consent of the governed in these zones?